In this video, I want to talk a little bit about April bass fishing. We're going to talk a little bit about what happens a lot of times in April. Also, a few techniques that can help separate you from other people, help you to catch bigger bass. Now, before we get into it, this video is brought to you by my apparel company, Fin Fishing. And guys, look, I have a lot of different products at Fin Fishing. I've got USA made sun shirts. I have duck shorts. I have the duck hat. A lot of different products, and shopping at Fin Fishing is surely the best way to help support this channel. So if you guys are in need for some new fishing apparel going into this year and really getting into fishing season, check them out down below. All right, let's talk about the month of April. The first thing that I really want to talk about when it comes to April bass fishing is kind of what the fish are doing, because depending on where you live in the country, this is going to be a little bit all over the place. I would say that the majority of the country is kind of in a pre-spawn to spawn phase. That is what you see. The further up north you go, in the month of April, there are certain times of the year where you still have ice on lakes, way up north in the month of April. But definitely towards the end of April, once you get into May, you have a lot of fish that have really made the transition, and they are in a lot of shallow water. Definitely some that are spawning. If you go down south, you're going to see a lot of bass spawning in the month of April, or even in the mid section. So you kind of have a lot of fish this time of the year, though, that are in shallow water. You definitely always are going to have a portion of fish that stay deep. We talk about this all the time, how fish do different things, but you have a large part of the bass population that is in shallow water. And when they're in shallow water, there are so many different ways that you can catch these bass. The biggest thing that you can do to really kind of help separate yourself from others is to try and fish big fish techniques. This is what is really going to help you separate yourself from the other. Fish techniques that big bass absolutely love. Now, one of the first ones that I am going to rely on a lot during this time of the year is a bigger swim bait. It just goes like the old saying, like throw a big fish like a big bait. And that's absolutely true. And I think that the month of April is probably one of your better months of the year to throw some big baits. Now, they don't have to be massive baits. They could be like a lot of 6 to 8 inch baits. That's actually the size of the baits that I throw the most, whether that's a bigger soft plastic like a mag draft style bait, or whether that's a glide bait, kind of in that same realm, kind of like the Spro, the Spro Chad. Those are two baits that I throw an awful lot, and in the month of April, I'm throwing them even more, because sometimes in April, you can go down a stretch, you can go down a bank, and there's been a lot of other guys who have gone down that exact same bank. And you could flip and pitch, you could throw spinner baits, you could throw this, you could throw that. And a lot of guys have been doing that exact same thing. And so some of those smarter bass sometimes will stay shallow and they go uncaught until they see that big bait that goes by. And if you think about it, a lot of bass that are kind of moving up and about to spawn, sometimes they got to get one more meal in them. Whether that's a big male or a big female, they know that they want to get one more meal in them, because the male might go, several weeks without eating. And the female will even go several days at times without eating. And so sometimes they want to get that big meal. And so even though those fish have seen a lot of baits, you all of a sudden throw a bigger swim bait in their direction, and they're in shallow water with a lot of ambush points. I'm telling you, this is the time of the year where you get a lot more fish that are committing to big baits than simply just following big baits. And so if you guys are not as familiar with throwing those bigger than average baits, I'm telling you, this is a great time of the year to do so, because again, they are committing to it. So that's one way that you can really outfish a lot of other anglers. You're not going to get as many bites, but you typically, if you catch 5, 6, 7 fish throughout the day, you're going to have some really big weight. Now, the other technique that I fish an awful lot during this time of the year, and it's just one that I just don't think a lot of guys think to fish, and that's a buzz bait. We've talked about it a lot during this time of the year. Now, I tend to fish the buzz bait a little bit more in that pre-spawn, and once I get to where I think the fish are on beds, I'm gonna switch over to more of like a frog style bait, like a poppin' frog style bait. But a top water during the month of April is a great way, again, like the swim bait, that is going to get you some bigger than average bites. And the thing about it is that I have caught buzzbait bass in 47-degree water before. And I've told you guys that before a lot. And when those bass are first moving up, it's still cold temperatures. A lot of guys out there are simply not thinking about topwater fishing. They just simply don't think about it. And this can be the best bite to catch some really big fish on it. And that's what I've seen exactly with this technique. You know, in the summertime, you can throw a buzzbait, you can catch a lot of fish and some big fish on it. But in the pre-spawn, leading up to the spawn, you don't always get a ton of bites, but it seems like almost every single one that you get is a big one. To me, it's a lot like buzzbait or like swim bait fishing, where you don't get a ton of bites, but the ones you get are big ones. And I've seen this a lot in the water temperature degree range around 50, like between 50 and 60 degrees. A buzzbait can be a really good way. Again, if you notice, there's a pattern in what I'm talking about here. It's just that we're trying to do things that are a little bit different than the norm. Big swim baits, a buzz bait. These are things that other guys aren't thinking about, and these are things that can help you to get a few extra bites out there. Now, the last thing that I want to leave you with when it comes to the month of April, and there's certain lakes that are this way a little bit more than other ones, but if you are fishing shallow and you are flipping and pitching or whatever it may be, even if you're fishing that glide bait or that buzz bait, if you get a bite during this time of the year, you have to immediately assume that there's a bed in that area. That's what I always try to do, especially when I know that like the water temp is like 58 to like 65, like anywhere in that range. If that water temp is around that and I get bit and I miss that fish, I am 1000% thinking there's probably a fish on a bed here. And this happens a lot on lakes that you can't see the bottom. Like obviously if you can see the bottom, you're gonna be able to see if there's a fish on a bed there. But if you are fishing in the spring, in April, and that happens, what I like to do, pick up a bait like a tube. For example, we just talked about this the other day. Pick up a tube, start flipping it and pitching it into that area repeatedly. Fish it there, at least give yourself 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes of literally making the exact same cast. If you get another fish to bite it, pick it up, and you swing and miss again, you probably have found a fish on a bed. So it's a good thing to keep pitching and flipping there. Now, I know there's a lot of guys that don't like the bed fish. So if you don't like the bed fish, then don't fish for that fish. But if you're okay with it, you can flip and pitch that bed, and eventually you can catch that fish. Now, sometimes what happens is most of the time you will catch the buck. If there's two fish on there, a male and a female, you will catch the male a lot of times quicker before the female. So if you catch a little one, don't think, oh, I caught that fish, time to move on. Keep flipping back into that exact same place. If you live down in Florida, you know this deal. Like you know it like the back of your hand. This time of the year, for you guys, it's pretty much anywhere from about January to May. Like if you catch a 12-incher, a 14-incher, a 15-incher, you flip back in that spot a handful of times, because sometimes the very next bite that you get is the female, and the female is going to be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pounds. It may be huge. Now, if you live in the northern part of the country like me, it may not be that big. It may be a 3-pounder, a 4-pounder, a 5-pounder. Still, it's a big fish for the body of water. And so guys, that's what I like to do when it comes to fishing in the month of April. Hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I will see you tomorrow.